Live once again. Y'all know I've been trying to go live kind of every day, and what I'm thinking is I'm going to eventually turn this into like the daily Brandon covers jujitsu radio show, you know? So I'm live again and I'm starting to add new elements now. I'm learning how to use my stuff. I got my little roadcaster over here, and now I learned how to bring in a guest. And my guest today, Carlos Machado, the ultimate jujitsu legend. What's going on, Carlos?
Man, I'm telling you, man, you reached out yesterday. I had no idea about the live. So I was in the midst of a few minutes before class, going crazy there, losing connection. I'm glad we hooked up today to catch up on what we left off and be ready to rock. So I'm at my office. I have no excuses. My head is shiny. I'm good to go.
Man, I'm super happy to have you. I've gotten to spend a little bit of time with you here recently through the camp we did together at your place. And then we did the PGF. You were there for it. And then we went to Mexico together.
Oh,
And
man.
man, I've just been, I feel really blessed to be like hanging out and absorbing your energy, man. You're just such a, not only are you wise at jujitsu, but I, I just feel like I learn a lot from you, like as a human, as a man. So thanks for the time we've been getting to spend together, man. It's been important to me.
It's mutual.
So I thought we would go live and we would talk the state of jujitsu.
Let's do it.
And I'd also thinking maybe I could just use this as an opportunity to kind of dig into some of your experience and some of your knowledge, how you feel about the past of jujitsu, where it's been,
Mhm.
your experience and watching as everything has changed.
Mhm.
So I guess my first question for you is, what do you think? How has jujitsu really changed over the years as a whole? And I'm not talking just about the sport right now, but just jujitsu as a whole. What have you seen that's really changed?
All right. So, whenever you have critical mass, it takes a turn on its own, a wave. So we had different waves in the beginning, like when the golden years in Rio, Brazil, when Rio was the heart of jiu-jitsu in the world. And then my cousins migrated to South Bay in Los Angeles, and my brother Hegan and the rest of the Machados tagged along. And then 93 came along with the UFC, and you had this skinny guy named Hoist Gracie fighting UFC and winning three in a row against guys with no weight division. It was literally like crazy, crazy, because at that point, you know, nobody knew what was to happen, right? And then as each generation evolved and kind of became a transition between practitioners to instructors and then mentors, you know what I'm saying? You start to spread out, and then you have talented people all across the board. Eddie Bravo in particular, John Danaher, and a host of names of individuals whose brains and heart and souls, you yourself included, became completely engulfed by jujitsu. All right. So I believe that we walk on the shoulders of giants. When I remember Rickson Gracie competing in Rio de Janeiro, it was a magic moment. You know, he was the biggest name at the time. My brother Hegan as well, competing, two of the top names at that time. And I remember the whole stadium would stop all the match, and everybody would watch just Rickson competing or just Hegan competing. And then when you fast forward and you have Gordon Ryan, you had Greg Jones, you have all this group of fighters, Mike Musumeci, the Rotolo brothers, newer and newer generations come. And what happens is it starts to catch traction. You know what I'm saying? Because right now you have more resources, more people that have dug deeper into the art of jujitsu, and also more quantity of people experimenting with it. So it doesn't matter where you are, who you are. What do you do for hobby? You watch tapes, you study people. You told me that, right? We enjoy learning and relearning. Okay, when you teach, you are relearning. But jujitsu doesn't escape from the essence. You got to have a core fundamentals, and there are always more simple answers to it. Now, uh, with evolution comes challenge. You know what I'm saying? Because what happened is, it's like you're learning a language that has a larger vocabulary. You know what I'm saying? So the terminology, the number of moves, the nuances. Look at 10th planet terminology. You know, the rubber guard. You know, the what do you call the trucker? You know, you have all these different names. I think it's very ingenious to say the least, because it becomes an image on people's head, and people associate the move with a picture. And they always say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I think even the evolution of the instruction aspect of jujitsu has evolved. You know what I'm saying? So we can be more specific on that. I'm being kind of vague and esoteric here, but we can dig deep.
What do you think about the way, I don't want to say the sport that jujitsu has split, because I don't believe that, but there are different parts of jujitsu now that you can focus on. Like, I would imagine when you guys were first coming up, and you can tell us a little more about this, that there really wasn't a sport to do. There was, we're learning the martial art jujitsu. We're building our life around that. But as jujitsu has grown in popularity, it's got all these other branches now. Like, you can just study the self-defense
Yeah.
portion. You can just do it for fitness. You can just focus on trying to be a competitive jujitsu player now. You could just focus on
Mhm.
running a school, or being in the media is even turning into a job for some
Mhm.
of us. Do you feel like that's good, or do you feel like in some ways we've lost our way?
Nah, I think that some people may have lost their way, but I think this is good. I'll tell you why. The more voices and the more platforms and the more resources available to disseminate the art, the better. You know what I'm saying? When you do a PGF, and I saw thousands of people on YouTube watching it. My kids were watching here, their friends, everybody. Oh, look at that over there on the corner, sitting on the comfy couch, talking to Brandon, whatever. There's so much. We are in the digital age. Anything you do. When I was talking to you in Zoltan, your idea about how they had the vision, you didn't want to attract at that time a physical audience. You wanted to get the virtual audience because you have the whole world
That's
at
right.
your feet, you know. And every successful event takes that in consideration. The UFC doesn't make the money with the gates; they make the money with the pay-per-views. You know what I'm saying? And then UFC Fight Pass subscriptions and so on. So I don't think that's bad. There are some bad people in you can have some bad apples here and there, but that doesn't change the fact that jujitsu has grown to a point that it has reached critical mass. You have mainstream right now. How many celebs that do jujitsu? Tom Hardy, Ashton Kutcher, Charles Unen.
They all
You
train with your brother.
Yeah, you can name like a long list, Mario Lopez. You can think of somebody, is doing jujitsu, models and so on. Yeah, it's gonna across the board, and you can watch like Real Steel with Hugh Jackman, and you're gonna see him talking to the son about in the old days how it used to be bare knuckle fights, jujitsu guys, the Gracies, the Machados. They used that on the script. There was a line in the conversation, and I remember me going with my kids, and I didn't know about it. And we heard that the name Gracie, the name Machado. What else can I say? Hollywood already spread the news, So you are an agent of good dissemination. We are here to disseminate because I can tell you this: jujitsu is a good thing. Anybody who does jujitsu, I don't know anyone that does jujitsu that doesn't improve their lives in a certain way.
Yeah, I think that really is true. And I think for some of us, like, jujitsu is this massively transformative thing. Like, sometimes people make fun of like the whole jujitsu changed my life thing, but for some of us, it really did change our life. Like, all of the opportunities that I have that have been set in front of me and my family,
Hmm.
the trajectory of my life because of my health, like, that's why I started jujitsu, was just to try to get in shape.
Hmm.
Me and my wife started together on the same day. She sat me down on the couch and she goes, "Hey, I didn't marry you so I could be a widow for the last 20 years of my life. You got to get in shape. I signed us up for martial arts class. And so that's how we started. So martial arts truly has changed my life. And now it's my business, it's my hobby. Whole family is into it. It's my friend groups, my job, traveling around, doing all this crazy stuff. So yeah, it's for some of us, it really has been majorly transformative.
Look, let me tell you this, Brandon. I don't think, and I could be mistaken or biased. I don't think there's any martial art that has the level of uh, caliber of practitioners on social terms, people that you engage with. You're gonna meet entrepreneurs, massive entrepreneurs, people that are in all kind of industries in your jiu-jitsu community. It is massive. I haven't seen another martial art that offers that depth of access to incredible people the way I have seen in jiu-jitsu. I have never seen that.
It's wild the people that you meet in the jujitsu circle. Just and I don't know any other martial art that's as addictive. Like I'm a guy who loves martial arts. I love Muay Thai, I love boxing, I love wrestling, I love Tung Sudo, which was my original art with Jamie. And I've studied Tai Chi. I wish I had a Kung Fu instructor over. You know what I'm saying? I love martial arts. But to me, no martial art has that addictiveness to it that
Mhm.
jujitsu does. What do you think it is about jujitsu that makes it so sticky for somebody?
For me, the two main things is the concept of the art, which is less effort, more results. So you
Okay.
learn how to relax more in order to get more, uh, and that causes you a much higher degree of endorphins in your system because you have tension with moderation if you do it right.
Mm.
Of course, in competition, you have to intensify because you depend on the clock and the rules. But the other addictive part, in my opinion, is the social component because there's a sense of whoever's out there is out there for you and you're there for them. It's such a communion. I'm not talking about community. It's a communion. You share the match with somebody, you're having a great time. I never got a chance to meet in person, Matt. Your student that you brought. What a likable character, and we were just working on the mat, doing techniques. You were showing me some stuff. I was showing you some stuff. We were there, both were winning, no matter what was happening. You see what I'm saying? So there's no such a thing that everybody wins all the time, but jujitsu does provide that.
It's yeah, it's fascinating. I sometimes I think that there's like an actual chemical addictiveness to it, like a dopamine release. Like there's because of the physical touch,
Yeah,
you know?
it is one of the most powerful drugs there is, and the catch is it's a good one. You never overdose of it, and you never get tired of it.
Yeah. But don't you think me and you are kind of crazy too though? Because we feel like I feel that way. Like I feel like I can never have enough. I could never do enough jujitsu. That's all I think about it. I'm you're how many years into the game? 50, how many?
Six.
56 years into jujitsu and you still feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm almost 20 in and I still feel that way.
Yeah. So
But not everybody's like that.
the learning of jujitsu, Hickson Gracie always says the invisible. Now you start to kind of literally wear the glasses on that science fiction they live. You see the messages, you see the subliminal, you see the things behind the veil. When you start to get deeper or doing longer, you start to feel more and you start to get it without thinking. So this is an amazing process. It's just kind of like very direct. The thing about for me, it's an energy transfer kind of deal. I feel I accomplish a goal every time I train, no matter how well or not I do. I did something that got me ahead one way or the other. I either learn how to make better one move or how to uh, recognize what I need to get better at. You know what I'm saying? One or the other. The other thing too is if you step on a mat barefooted, I look at the mat as a battery charger. You know what I'm saying? So I could teach several hours in a row and I feel energized by the time I'm done. I cannot tell you that physically if we are rolling a lot, if we're gonna have to have time for hydration, for catching up our breath at a point in time. It may be a long day, if you're not well fed or not hydrated, those things can play a role. But if everything is in place, you should always walk out of the mat energized in more ways than one. Physically, even if you're tired, you feel refreshed, and mentally and spiritually, you feel on a high. That's what jujitsu does.
I think when you're really plugged into it, it does. And I think that the longer that you can stay with it and the more devoted you come to it, I think that becomes more and more true. I
Yeah.
really do.
Well, when
How
you
how has your so you've been training 56 years.
uh
50, that's crazy. That's incredible. How has your philosophy on what jujitsu is evolved over the years? Because, like, even for me, I've been training basically a third as long as you have.
Mhm.
But even for me, I've felt my relationship with jujitsu has evolved and changed over the years. Like, just like any relationship, in the beginning, it's all hot and heavy, and it's all it's built on lust. It's built on getting after it. But
Mhm.
then over time, you learn your relationship evolves, it becomes deeper. You learn more about I learn more about jujitsu, and jujitsu shapes me in a different way than it used to, and my goals change, and I change, and so my relationship with jujitsu has changed. Whereas I
Mhm.
used to want to be one of the best guys in the world, now I'm just I feel fulfilled in a different way. Jujitsu gives me something different back. But I'm curious to hear like your insight into that. What is it that jujitsu still does for you, and how has
Okay.
that changed?
So you asked me how do I perceive jujitsu now?
Yeah,
How do I look at jujitsu now compared when you start? It's there's a degree of ego. You wanna get the better of whoever you're training against. You wanna tap out whoever you get a hold of. If you have the competition, you want to go out there and win tournaments and so on. But once you focus on the art, you start to realize that it's much more than that. Okay. So I look at myself like things I wish I knew when I was a white belt. I always have that question, So I remember I couldn't sweep people after a few rows. The sweep was not working. And today, you remember we were playing a little bit of a strategy: keep your low leg strong, and it makes your top leg
dude, I've
strong.
probably I've just real quick, I've probably used that sweep 30 times in
Mhm.
live training since we got back. That in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
So,
good
and,
looking out.
and the thing with jujitsu is when you hit the source, it stays with you and it doesn't fail.
Yeah,
The reason I can measure if something is right is time testing. If you and I worked out that day and whatever you took out, you're able to replicate consistently week in, week out, that makes my point. See what I'm saying? But I didn't have that knowledge a while back. I used to do, both legs even, and I felt the result was mixed. I had to do more steps. And so I look at jujitsu, what is one thing I can do to improve and go backwards? So if I was that white belt that sucked at that sweep, if I was to do it again now, I would be able to sweep everybody that I was, and then my white belts right now, they're gonna have that I had, they're gonna already
mm,
get that going compared to the white belt that I was, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is simplicity. For instance, if it takes more than 3 steps for you to do something, I consider that you start to get into the rabbit hole that you have to do more steps and more steps. It requires more time, more tempo, more practice, more skill set, more physical attributes, and the average Joe will never be able to take full advantage of a technique if the steps that it takes to make the technique work are too many. You know what I'm saying? I remember watching an instruction on a sweep that had a mixture of spider guard with something else with berimbolo. And I was like, man, I believe I can do that. I can break it down and make it work. But the average Joe is going to have a terrible time, and he might lose his momentum just trying, or maybe feel self-conscious that he doesn't have what it takes to learn the technique because it's not the fact that there are too many steps and makes it complicated. It's the fact that maybe there's something missing on him that makes him ineligible to learn jujitsu. There's no
Mhm.
such thing when it's simple. Anybody can do. And my goal is to make the average above average. Of course, if you have a champion, world champion, not everybody will be on the podium. You can have a lot of aspiring contenders doing well in tournaments, but not everybody is going to get the gold medal at the same time. The other thing that I look at jiu-jitsu before, I had this idea of if I don't accomplish a move, I fail. No, now I have a threshold. I want to see how close I get to the end. So if I try to sweep you and I almost swept you, I consider that a success. Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't take
Yes.
that as failing because I'm a little closer to the target. And the other
Yeah, you're
thing,
collecting data.
yeah. So it's pretty much like Neo on the Matrix. Now the other thing, if I train with anybody, I have one goal only. If we're rolling, I want to make sure that at the end of the match or the end of the row, you are more tired than I am. It doesn't matter if you tap me. It doesn't matter if I don't tap you. It doesn't matter if you hold me down for 5 minutes on the top. If you're more tired than me at the end, that's my goal.
Tell me more about that. Why has it shifted to that for you?
Because what happens, people don't realize that energy is the real deal in jiu-jitsu. You spend less, your opponent spends more. You know what I'm saying? That's the core. Everything originates from that. Oh, it's the gentle art is based on leverage. What does that mean? If it's gentle means you don't have to go faster in order to get the results. You of course the dynamic changes when you put formats.
Mhm.
Tournaments,
You
rules.
put boxes on it. Yeah.
Yes, you put a clock, then it becomes a race. Then you have to intensify. But even then, there's several things that can be done that I think can mitigate your effort when you accomplish certain positions. If you watch like when Gordon Ryan competes, he takes his time. He doesn't go 100
Mhm.
miles per hour. He kind of, and when he has a position of advantage that he can apply pressure and make that person spend more energy, he'll take advantage of that. My brother Jean Jacques has mentioned to me in the past, uh, if he's trying to pass somebody's guard and he feels the guy's spending too much energy, he doesn't try to pass. He tries to maintain the position,
Cook them.
motivate or stimulate that person to keep spending energy. So by the time he passes, that person has less on the gas tank.
I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think as you get older, like I'm 44 now, already my body is telling me, "Hey, you're not exactly what you used to be," you know? And
Mhm.
so I think that my goal sets have to change if I want to continue to get better. I have to start to find new ways to accomplish the same things if my goal is to continue to get better. Now, if my goal is just to show up and, not get hurt or whatever and just keep coming, then, you know,
Mhm.
you can kind of, I guess, keep the same strategies. But
Mhm.
I want to ultimately, I want to attach to like that romantic idea of what jujitsu is, which is effortlessness,
Yep.
domination with effortlessness.
Yep.
And so as my body gets older, I have to find a deeper connection to jujitsu to even be able to access the next level.
Yep.
Like get stronger, okay, sure, get faster. I don't know if I'm getting faster, bro. Like faster may not be in the cards anymore.
Right.
Stronger, more endurance, probably not in the cards anymore, but
Mhm.
better connection to the romanticism, the essence of jujitsu. I feel like I can still get better for a long time.
Yep. Well, I can tell you this. When I try to make an image in my head to illustrate what I'm saying, I pick a Marvel picture like Doctor Strange. I'm not sure if you recall.
Yes.
That you have a time loop. So no matter where the person goes, you put them in the same situation over and over again. Okay. So this is about developing patterns. When people say build a game, that's what they're meaning, a pattern. So I have 3 or 4 things that I do in combination or sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter which number you start. If you're on number 2, You're going to go to one, or you're going to go to three. If you're on number three, you're going to go to four, or you're going to go to two. So as long as I put you in either number on that sequence of four, okay, I'm going to make the unpredictable predictable. You know what I'm saying? So why do you develop pattern? You want to be in control. And when you develop pattern and the person fall into your pattern, and the coolest thing in the world in jiu-jitsu is when you say what you're going to do to your opponent before you do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that means you put them into that pattern. You almost like you have this boundary that, I'm scrambling with you here, I'm scrambling with you there. But once I put you in this pattern, you know,
Now you're caught in the cycle.
yeah, if I get your back, a seat belt with the body lock, then I know I'm gonna get you. I kind of give you a random idea, simplistic on a submission, but it could be not necessarily a submission, but you don't go anywhere. You're stuck with me until I get you in one of the four points that I'm keeping you in. So uh, that's kind of like just an idea. When
No,
I
that's super insightful. Like you're not worrying about the order of operations as much as you are just dropping them into a trap. And then whichever part of the trap that they happen to touch, then you go and you set the rest of the hooks, so to speak, later. But
Yeah.
once they've taken one
Mhm,
bite, you don't
mhm.
ever let them you don't ever let them off the hook, I guess.
Yeah, I saw something really interesting too, Brandon, on how you train. I think Roger Grace is the one that mentioned that. I could be wrong. He was on a podcast with Lex Friedman,
Okay.
and I guess the question about how he trains or how he does his jujitsu concepts. He said that you can go easy on the attack, meaning you can attack somebody kind of fainting or just going half speed, but you should never be weak on your defense. Okay, you should not, no matter who you train with, your defense has to be always sharp because the muscle memory is weird. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? If you give your brain, your nervous system the wrong message, they're going to interpret that it's okay for you to mess up and keep your elbow up a little bit when you're relaxed, when your elbow should be tight at all times. You know what I'm saying? And that reminds me of the one of the greatest ballet dancers in the world, Mikhail Baryshnikov. When he used to do ballet and rehearse, he rehearsed as if he was performing at the biggest venue in the world. He never would go easy on the form or be overly relaxed. He literally took to the letter, keep sharpening, no matter when. Okay, so that's a level of, I guess, diligence that we have to be aware of.
But how do you find that balance though? Because like I can't come out, especially at 44, and like uh, I would venture most people that are training jujitsu, the vast majority, they can't go out and go, okay, I'm doing competition style practice. I'm going as hard as I can today and still come back and run it again 4 more days this week at that same clip.
You're talking about something else. You misunderstood my
All
thing.
right, go ahead.
I was not clear on that. Y- You're talking about the intensity. You
Yes.
could be fully relaxed. You could be completely taking a nap while you're training, but your body positioning has to be sharp.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
You shouldn't be lax in certain ways because you can I wouldn't say bad habits, but do a disservice to your nervous system. See, you don't learn jujitsu by thinking. You learn jujitsu by feeling.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? What teaches you jujitsu is the surface of your body. You know what I'm saying? So whenever you feel something, it goes to your brain, and only when through shaking and challenges and resistance, the brain makes the connection back. You have the moment comparable to when you learn how to ride a bike without the help from anybody. You can go on your own. Okay, I can hold my balance now. So the integration of knowledge, it's a two-way nervous system. So some people, when they do drills relaxed, that's why they never get good at applying it in real life, because if you don't put challenge intensity and do positional with people fighting back, you'll not fine-tune to reality. You know what I'm saying? So you got to put intensity in the midst of it.
That's super interesting. So you feel like there's never really a time to give to your opponent and let him get a little deeper?
I do. I actually I do. I do privates or I'm teaching. I let the guys get a good position, and then I try to work my way out.
Mm,
But it's not something as a habit. When I'm training,
I
if
see.
I'm rolling,
You're
I,
making it's intentional when you're doing
I'm
that.
trying to make sure that I keep my cool. I don't, not with tension, but just with consideration. I'm considering that my
I see.
body is a tool. I have to make sure I tell it what to do at all given times. I don't want it to have any wrong reflex being sent to it.
That's super insightful. That's a, like, master level insight.
Well, you've done taekwondo. How many lessons you had that you heard of people putting tennis ball under their armpit
Oh,
and
yeah.
holding it so they can keep their guard when they are doing the kicks? They keep their hands, properly positioned and stuff like that. Same thing.
Oh, that's master level insight. That's crazy. Hey, what do you think let's think about, like, in the history of jujitsu. And now I'm thinking about, like, technical innovations that
Mhm,
you've seen come
mhm.
over the years. Like, walk us through, like, okay, here's when the half guard came into the scene. And then the next innovation, and here's when the reverse De La Hiva came into the scene. And, like, kind of take us through some of the most important technical innovations that you've seen over the years.
It's funny because in the past, initially IBJJF was the main, I guess, option for most jiu-jitsu guys before, and then ADCC came along. And then after that, we had Monogi Jiu-Jitsu, and then Eddie Bravo came with the ABI, which was a dividing moment in terms of before and after. And then, of course, fast forward to nowadays, the WNO, the CJI, and everything else. It's just kind of like to another level. But it's funny. I remember, for instance, the half guard, Roberto Gordo,
Mhm.
uh, who used to train with me while I was in Brazil as well, with Jean Jacques, and then with Carlos Gracie Jr., our cousin. When we left, he hurt his knee one time. I think he was I'm not even sure if he was a black belt back then, and he couldn't do full guard. So he started to do half guard and develop his whole game, retaining people in the half guard and developing the deep half game, and then going for the reversal that nowadays have become common practice amongst many. I remember De La Riva, the guy who created going matches against Royler Gracie, and they were major rivals at the time. And back then, I don't know, De La Riva has some physiological thing. His foot is huge, for his height. That guy would put a grapevine around your leg. You couldn't get his foot shaken. Crazy. So you see when those things were taking place, never knowing that. Fast forward, that would be a staple. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I'm still with you.
So, and of course, then you have the innovations with Danaher and some of the other Daisy Fresh and nowadays I don't even know how many other camps. The 10th Planet, all very versed on attacking the legs. And I remember Eric Paulson used to do that ages ago. Catch wrestling was the one that had it going way back. And I think Jiu-Jitsu Nogi borrows a lot of that from catch wrestling, because they already had the toe holds and the knee bars and heel hooks going like crazy. Sambo has always used some of it, not as extensively, but if you ask me, what has caught more my eyes, and I can tell you based upon what I saw Kyle Chambers at the event that we just came from in Mexico, it's the ability to scramble your opponent into the trap. You see what I'm saying? So, because everybody
Mhm.
in tournaments, there's a lot of speed, intensity, and scramble. But the thing is, when they trap each other, the precision is to a much higher level. You know what I'm saying? Even for people who are versed. I remember
No,
watching
that's
one
super
time
interesting.
when we were talking about when Nick Rod fought Gordon Ryan one time, and I know Ryan was the winner, but there was a big pop. on his leg. He got caught in the heel hook. So sometimes one thing that caught my eye too is I see one guy attacking and the other one defends attacking back. And I mentioned that to you. The counter attacker sometimes often is the one that succeeds. I remember Kyle Chambers. I think somebody tried to attack his leg in the match
Yeah, in the
uh,
semifinal.
the semifinal, and the kid was doing well, getting other people in the legs. But man, when he went against Kyle, Kyle had his number. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah, they
Carlos,
had it. That was what was that kid's name? Chewy Magana.
yeah, he was no joke. Yeah.
Yeah, that kid was serious. He had a really good leg battle with Kyle. What
One
do you
thing
think about like how do you like the innovation that the leg lock game has brought into jujitsu?
I'm studying it and incorporating. I'm trying to find a way to do with the safety in mind. You got to know your enemy, and I think a lot of times, I remember there was a WNO with a was that Pato who fought this other kid from Brazil in the last
Oh, yeah, he fought Fabricio Andre.
yeah, and the Brazilian challenger was having, I guess, a good performance past the guard a few times. And I remember my cousin Hansel talking about that. A lot of times you attack the legs and the guy keeps the legs away and he tries to protect the legs. Then your opponent starts to attack your back. You know, that becomes your secondary target when you change your stance. And I saw that taking place, and eventually Pato was able to actually get the guy's back,
Yeah,
uh,
incredible. That was an
interesting.
incredible match.
So, but what I see is for me, what really intrigues me is training methodology, because how do you do the training? Because you got to figure out how can you do without injuring your training partner or your, or you yourself getting injured while preparing, right? So I think EBI was a great motivator when they had the tiebreakers that people, I mean, I always kind of done that. I always liked to start in bad positions even before all this came along. But EBI gave, I guess, what was missing in terms of, hey, guys, we got to put ourselves in bad position. We got to escape when almost, the arm is gone, when people start from our back and so on. So I think it made the game more interesting because you can have a good submission, but people has a lot of good escapes. And a lot of times, in the way the rules are set, it's not the guy who submits the other that wins; is the one that escapes the fastest. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's intriguing, and that in itself is technique as well. Because it's survival. So I see a dual purpose on that.
You like the EBI rule set then?
I liked you always try to look for ways in which stalling is avoided or limited.
Yes.
And I know there were some attempts to add on. If nothing's happening, you change position and you start from that positions. And I think anything you do towards that direction will increase the interest of the audience because they're going to see more action. It's not going to be as monotonous in case those guys are not doing anything. And I think it's a good, I would say, deal breaker, not even tiebreaker. Hey, you can get the better of me, but if you don't finish me, when we go to the tie break, I might get you. You know what I'm saying? So you
Yeah.
almost give a second chance to an underdog. You know?
Yeah, I think the only issue really the EBI rules has is that people started stalling just to get to the overtime. So I think there's got to be some way to fix that gaming of the
Mhm.
system.
Yeah,
And once somebody figures that out, I feel like overtime produces some of the most exciting moments
yeah,
in a match.
I agree.
So
Now, since you mentioned that, and I know you may talk about PGF, but I think PGF, the trend setting moment for that is submission is what counts. That's it, submission. And if you get the neck, you score the most because the neck is king. You know what I'm saying? Is the
yeah,
most, is like is the highest value. And so that right there for me, it speaks a lot about the, what an awesome rule. And you know what's crazy, Brandon? I had the time to go there, spend a few days with you when you did the last edition of PGF. Even when there was a match that submissions didn't take place, the excitement was still there.
It
You know,
goes the whole time
they were
because you
going,
have to hunt the whole
they
time.
they were going back and forth. You see, that for me is very appealing.
Yeah, I think that having the draw as a potential option is really important. But you can never have a draw as an option if you're having an elimination tournament. So we have to have a format where they can go where we're going to get to see the guy 10, 15 times. And
Yep.
PGF right now it's 12.
Well,
So that means a draw and a loss really does the same thing for you. It gives you 0.
yeah,
So you're incentivized to just go ahead and go for it then.
yeah. One more thing that's really nice. Of course, this is an elite tournament. Not everybody can just walk in there and compete.
Right.
So it creates a trickle down effect that other athletes might be triggered or motivated to compete more and climb their ranks so they can earn the right to compete in an event of yours. And I think when we talk about CJI and ADCC, CJI in particular with the purse that they offer now, I can envision a lot of other low tier organizations popping in and being a feeder for the major
Yeah,
events. Yeah, so
sure.
that's why I told you that with your question about if Craig Jones, if anything to tell him, what would that be? I said, man, go all out on this one, man. Nobody has done this. This is history in the making, and you're going to learn from mistakes, whatever they happen. And believe me, they're going to happen. But just push forward because you're going to cause a shockwave everywhere
Oh yeah.
on this. Not everybody will be able to pay $1 million per division, but there will be quite a few organizations that will spring out and offer something worth for people to build themselves up.
They caught me sneezing on camera right there, Carlos.
That's all right, man.
I had to sneeze. Hey, so okay, you brought up CJI and ADCC. Let's pop over here. I want to do this.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's see if we can roll through and have a look at. I got to get the right camera setting. I don't know. I don't like that either. I think it's this one here. So yeah, let's roll through and have a look at this. I want to get to the current list of athletes. See if we can find one. Well, this is kind of an old one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I want you to give me names that pop off the screen for you right off the bat. All right. So this is the minus 80 kilogram division.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got the Rotolos, both the
Yep.
Rotolo boys in this division. But we got Andy Varela, PGF, current PGF champion. Got Jason Nolf, Levi Jones Leary, Tommy Langicker, Owen O'Flanagan, Mateus Denise, Hinato Canuto, Nikki Ryan, Joseph Chin, Andrew Tackett, Hulk Barbosa, both the Rotolo brothers, and I believe Roberto Jimenez is in this division as well.
Mm-hmm.
Who pops off the screen to you right away?
Okay, so of course the Rotolo. Right here, I see the teammates Nick Ryan and Chen over there. For me, it's like wow, those guys had amazing performance just recently at the last WNO, and the prospect of having them actually going at each other is kind of like intriguing to say the least. I'm familiar with Canuto, who is a great competitor. Varela is a monster and very resilient. He was going all out. Man, that was incredible. The Tackett brothers, of course. Is that the Tackett brothers or just one of them?
This
Sorry.
is one Tackett brother.
Oh, okay.
William is in the over 80 kilogram
Okay. All
division.
right. I know there were two. Yeah. So imagine you have a tournament where, compared to soccer, where all the playoff teams start on the first round. They don't wait until the end of the tournament. So it doesn't matter what match order you have at CJI,
I
it's going to
know.
be like a finals worth watching. So
It's
every match
crazy.
for me is like final level. Any of these guys, anytime they meet, that could be the finals.
What do
You
you
know,
think about Denise? Denise is not the last ADCC, but the prior one. He was the 88 kilo champion. And then
Hmm.
he's put on weight since then, but he's coming down to under 80. What do you think about that move for him?
The only thing when you have that drop uh, is always the ability to perform, throughout the tournament. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a give and take. Not taking away his possibilities, but yeah, it's a long stretch, isn't it, Brandon?
Yeah.
For where he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel divided with that, to be sincere with you, because I know we always talk about the weight cut as something to wonder about. People nowadays see that happening a lot. I know some tournaments you actually weigh in right before you compete, like at BJJF. At least they started doing that
Mhm.
for your first match. That's when you weigh in, so you avoid all that long or that big weight cuts that will put people you know not in the ideal state.
Hey,
Uh,
this is a good question from the chat right here. Jesse Dalton says, I'd like to know what Master Machado thinks about kids like Jet Thompson and Grace Gundrum. So you got to see Jet at the PGF. I know you're at least
but I
a
know.
little bit familiar with Grace.
Yeah,
Or, the Rotolos have
sure.
popped up. They were those kids. Roberto Jimenez was that kid. Andrew Tackett was that kid.
Yeah.
What do you think about all these crazy kids in jiu-jitsu right now?
So you got the word prodigy is what comes to mind when you talk about those names: the Real Tolos, Jack Thompson. He is a prodigy. Grace, she is a prodigy. Uh, the thing is, what you're going to see now is some of this younger generation, like Jet or Grace, for instance. They're still, if you look at them, they have, although Jet, he's a stud, he's a big boy. He's not just a little guy. He's muscular still. But what's scary is that kid will be the size of a football player.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so he's already doing what he's doing now. I don't even want to see him when he's fully grown
Wow.
up. You see what I'm saying? Now,
Horrifying.
now the thing is, not to consider them because they feel their age doesn't justify them participating. In my opinion, it's a mistake. You know what I'm saying? Because their performance level, Helena Craven, is
Oh
that her
yeah, Elena.
she, she's 16, 17-year old, and she fights against the top champions, blue belt, and she's beating everybody. You know what I'm saying? So, like I told you, I think the prodigies should have a place. Yeah, and I'll be surprised if they don't do well.
Do you think that this is kind of off topic a little bit, but do you think we've reached a point in jiu-jitsu where the belts just don't really matter, at least competitively?
Well, the belts, what happens is the it's very blurry because
Yeah.
you can have a top wrestler, blue belt, walk in and wipe out a black belt somewhere. Just with and I'm not saying the black belt doesn't have merit. I'm just saying there's so many variables that have to be taken in consideration. The purpose of the belts is not necessarily to only differentiate different degrees of knowledge. Is that when you have, let's say, a martial arts academy, uh, if you don't have a structure and a goal setting approach, it becomes kind of like, for many, easy for them to quit. So
Mhm.
the belt is not a promise; it's a possibility. If it becomes a promise that you're going to get it, whether you deserve or not, then it becomes questionable because then there's integrity, in question as well. But in regards to having the belt, and believe me, let me tell you something. Even when I was training in Brazil back in the old days before jiu-jitsu became big as it is now, purple belts are always called the devil of the black belts. They have always been, devilish because they have that marriage of they already know enough to be dangerous and a threat, but they haven't spent enough time on the mat to realize they are. That's the only edge that an experienced black belt might have, is to keep them thinking that they are not there yet. But believe me, nowadays the problem is people are training earlier. They're having access to more information. There's better coaching and instruction, and more people of talent doing it. So the quality of what you're going to see produced, and believe me, Jack Thompson, for instance, I'm sure he trains every day, all day long. That kid lives and breathes jujitsu. So
Yeah.
he is uh, he's exceptional in all aspects, and I really enjoy his personality. Personality, he's a very humble kid, good at bringing, but he's not the rule. Most guys in jiu-jitsu, they go on the day to day. They will never, even now, if you want to find a black belt to compete no gi against Jack Thompson, you're gonna have to go deep because many guys out there are not gonna make with that kid.
Oh yeah.
Okay? So does that mean that not having a belt system at your academy should be justified? I think they are two separate issues. You know what I'm saying? So if you have an academy, you have to run your academy as a business too. So the belts kind of keep a structure that tends to keep people committed longer. So
Just because of the nature of goal setting.
yeah, yeah, it's a structure.
Man, over the years running the academy, so we started this gym in 2010. So 14 years we've had the gym. The number one most stressful thing for me is being in charge of everybody else's rank around. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that is just so stressful. That's the part that brings me the most stress, because I know some people put so much, like, right or wrong, they attach so much of their self-worth into that goal set that they're putting together. And
Mhm.
I want to just grab them, because now, after having achieved my black belt, and I've had it for what, like 9 years or something like that. Like, now I want to grab them and go, hey, it's not that important. Like, don't tie your self-worth into it. But I still want to put this goal in front of them and have them strive for it, because it is important, but it's not as important as you're making it. So I don't know. How do you find that balance as an instructor, as a leader?
So you talk about leader, okay? A leader has to have a vision and has to share that vision. So if you don't share or give a roadmap, doesn't matter who, that person is going to go left and right and left, and not go forward at points in time. So I think students with direction, if you have a curriculum, you have a structure, and you deliver the information and you test what they're learning, at least you create a structure and a degree of steps that will give direction. You know what I'm saying? Because if you don't give direction, I'm not gonna be light on this. If you feel hesitant about giving somebody a rank, it's never the student's fault. It's always the
Mm,
instructor's fault. If a student fails in a rank, it's always the instructor's fault, unless the student didn't show up. But if the student did everything and he or she failed, it's the instructor's fault. It's on the delivery of the instruction and what kind of instruction is being delivered. You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
And you're raising people to mature into becoming. I have that thing. What's your goal in jujitsu? You want to raise the level of confidence of the people that are under you. There is only one way for that to happen. They have to become competent first.
Yes.
So the worst feeling in the world is somebody earn a rank when they feel they don't deserve. Because then you have that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I got given a belt, but I don't feel like I earn it. We hear that.
Yeah. And I've always erred on the side of, I make them wait too long.
Yeah.
And so when I make my errors, it tends to be like, well, I probably should have promoted that guy already, but let me just sit on it for a couple of more months. I want to push him just a little more.
But this is not about the student, it's about yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, that's why I talk about make the average above average. Because if your parameter is, I will only give a belt, let's say, example, if you're a blue belt, you're going to be a blue belt, you have to beat all the blue belts in the room. If you're a purple belt, you're creating unrealistic expectations.
For
Because,
sure.
and the second part is, oh, unless you win two tournaments in a row, which actually was a criteria in Brazil, you have to win two tournaments at a point in time and be a champion in order for you to be considered a next rank. So now you're tying up a rank to a performance. How many champions do you know? If you have a school with 200
Yeah.
people, are you going to have 200 champions?
No.
Hopefully so. But if that's not the case, those who are not, they're condemned by criteria that the expectations are
Yeah,
unreal.
that's not realistic.
So I say, make them competent in whatever it is that you're teaching. If I teach only 10 moves and they know really well those moves, and I can test that guy, and it doesn't matter who they go against, they can pull off one on another, that makes me happy.
You know what I
But
started doing is I started thinking about the belt completely as something that's between me and that person and the belt. Like instead of like you have to meet this criteria or know this particular set of techniques, I started saying, well, this is about, well, let's just take Nakaya, one of my students, Nakaya, for example.
Mhm.
Are you a purple belt version of Nakaya? Like, have you ascended to that next level of where you could be as a jujitsu practitioner? And that might look, you might be beating black belts right now, but are you meeting what you're capable of at this level? And so I started thinking of it like that. And you know, still that's still super hard because now you're assessing everyone on an individual level, and you've got such a large association. I would think that there's just really almost no way that you can do it that way. You have to have a tight curriculum. I'm still just running 200 students out of here, you know what I mean? So
Well,
like you got to have like a totally different set of criteria, I would think.
the direction has to be there. Whether people follow or not, it's another question. Whether the students will perform at the level expected, it's another question. But at least from an instructor and mentor's perspective, I have to be have the structure built and deliver for them the tools they need to replicate that. You know what I'm saying? Now the thing you talk about, how they say, one of the things that really happens a lot is, oh, this guy's so good. Why don't we just put him as a black belt? There are the criteria other than just the skills alone. There's a degree of maturity,
I feel that way too.
you know,
That's one thing I've really changed over the years. It's
yeah,
like, man, I almost feel like you need 10 years to be a black belt.
yeah,
Not because you don't not nothing to do with even your skill set, but about what you become over the course of 10 years of dedication to a thing. You're different.
yeah. So the thing I say is, let's say you don't miss any class whatsoever. You come to every class, you do everything right, you perform at your best every time there's a rank. It'll take you 8 years to become a black belt, the way I look at it right now, as it is. How many people do you know on the planet that will not miss a week, that will not miss a month, that will not stop here and there? So even with all the guidelines clear, that will be more likely than not it's going to take more than 8 years. Like you said, 10 years, it's not uncommon for you to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu. It's not an easy art if you're looking for belts.
What's the fastest you've ever not heard of, but like personally seen or like been a part of that person's journey? What's the fastest you've ever seen anybody go to black belt?
I haven't made anybody faster than whatever time frame I'm giving you. I think unless I had a guy who was already advanced as a purple belt somewhere, and then he came to me and became my student. So he already cut the journey halfway.
Yeah.
But let's say somebody starting from scratch, not in my gym. I don't know. I don't remember anybody getting ranked faster than 8 years.
Man.
Uh, 7.5, 8 years, I guess.
But like you think about some of the most legendary black belts that we have in the sport got there in 3 or 4. Like think about BJ Penn. Now
Yeah,
he was not just black belt, he was world champion black belt in 3 years, 3.5 years. I think Cobrinha went crazy fast, right?
yeah. I'm not sure, but this is another question. Like, I mean, I'm not against if somebody advance somebody because there's no way for you to keep that guy. Like, for instance, if you have a guy who's like a Olympic judo champion, gold Olympic medal wrestler, and then he starts doing jujitsu, he already has so much baggage of
Yeah.
experience right from the gate. that how can you manage keeping that guy on a timeline like everybody else? So you may, I guess, take one or another thing in consideration. But like I told you, I aim the average Joe. I want to make the average Joe above average. I want
Yeah.
jujitsu to be for everyone. So it's not the athlete who is like at the peak, or the prodigy, Rotolo, prodigy or Jack Thompson. I'm talking about the average Joe.
The regular
Those
dude. That's
guys,
me.
those guys, they could be black belts faster than anybody, but that's not the usually the audience that my radar is focused on.
Yeah, I feel that completely. Like even here at the gym, at my own gym, like the athletes, the guys who care about being professional competitors or MMA fighters, I don't coach those guys day to day. That's what Matt Scaff does. I teach the regular dude classes because that's who I relate to. That was me when I started. I didn't even know there was jujitsu competition. I just thought we were going to learn martial arts and lose some weight, and that this was a cool one, you know. So I relate to that guy, and I wasn't talented. I didn't blow through the ranks fast.
Yeah.
So
Look at
those are the guys I feel their vibe when they walk in. Like, oh, you got 2 kids and a job. Like, okay, I understand what you're working with.
so Brandon, you have math wisdom. You know what I'm saying? Nobody can teach you that. Only time. You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying? So that's one of the advantages, I believe, by expanding a little bit more the time.
I think so too.
Is people will really get better at some areas that would be so critical for their eventual evolution and deepening of the art.
And I think that now I learn faster than people who learn fast because
Yep.
I've learned how to learn jujitsu over the years because I had to learn how to learn it. I wasn't talented. And so
Yep.
it took me 4 years to become a blue belt. But every belt that I got after that, it took me a little less time.
Hmm.
And by the time I got my brown belt, I was a black belt and I mean a little bit less than a year from brown to black.
You touched on something. I'm not saying that was the case with you. When I teach somebody that has impairment in learning or has difficulty compared to the average person, in the past I would still give my attention and teach them, but you can't help as an instructor. Sometimes you feel like, man, that this person didn't get it yet. Oh my goodness, you start to think about it. It kind of like nowadays I have a complete different approach. If I see one of those, I don't have favorites in my class, but I will really lock on that person and make sure that they get as much as they need, even if it's a little bit extra, to ensure that they can go at a good pace at a point in time. They really motivate me. When I get somebody who has any difficulty or slow learners, man, I just get to them. Open hearted, not upset or grudgy. You know what I'm saying? Because I attest to what you're saying. Once they go through and the muscle memory clicks, they become the opposite.
Yeah.
Those guys become prodigious. It's crazy.
So here's a comment. This is Brave Little Spidey. The average Joe works or goes to school. If that person can do both job or school and train without missing a day, that's one very responsible individual. That's true.
Well,
Um,
you got to do the best you can with what you got. You know,
the pimped out platypus, 3 years. I've been training 3 years and I couldn't imagine being a black belt. Here's a good question from the chat. This is Anthony Parker. He said, should a student lose rank if they haven't been able to train for a little while or haven't been able to train for a time?
I never demote somebody. I just stretch longer their next rank. He's going to have to catch up. So if you stop for a long period of time, you've been a blue belt, you're on the verge, you're going for purple, and then you stop for 2 years, you're not going to be ranked anytime soon until you catch up with your skill set. So I just hold them back a little longer.
All right. I want to move to a couple of questions that I had for you that I think would be fun for people to hear. Okay. What is your favorite jujitsu match of all time. You got to pick one. It's got to come down to one. What do you choose?
Uh, Matches that I watched.
Mm-hmm. That
Okay.
you've seen, either whether it was in person or not.
Okay. Man, that has so many good ones. My favorite match, huh? Man, that's challenging.
Well, okay, so let's do this. Let's narrow it down, and then I'll make you narrow it down to one.
Okay.
Just think of a great one.
Okay. Uh, because my mind now, I'm time traveling here. Uh, you know, uh, one match, one favorite match. I think it was my brother John. You know, he was competing. You know, and bear with me. I'm not talking. I know nowadays you have many more competitors that have competed way more back then, but in terms of the dynamic of the family, late Grandmaster Carlson Gracie, the mentor and instructor of the greats that created American Top Team, and several of those great guys like Ricardo Liborio, Murilo Bustamante, Mario Sperry, Amari Bitet, all these guys from my generation. I remember there's a guy, I think his name is first name is Ricardo Bolão. His nickname Bolão, Bolao, and he
What does
and
that
my
mean?
brother, huh?
What does that mean? What does the name mean?
Bolão is
Below.
like a rounded, like a ball,
Okay.
big ball, because he had a round face. Anyhow, he was an extremely good competitor, and I think he and John went for a match, and they would go back and forth every tournament, and they were the top ones in the division. And I remember Carlson Gracie, he almost liked to gamble on the outside, and I remember uh, Hobson Gracie, Hansel Gracie's dad, was on the corner as well, and everybody was like cheering, to John, and then Carlson and his guys cheering for the other guy. And at that particular day, uh, my brother had the better of him, and they had very tough matches in the past. I think the other competitor took one of his matches, and then he was able. It's a trilogy, and on the trilogy, eventually John came out on top. You know, and I think there was a funny thing that happened, and I'm not accusing anybody, but somebody, John had a choke on the guy. He was about to tap the guy out, and somebody called the time 1 minute before the end. You know what I'm saying? So the match was over before the submission, and that was not right. And so there was a havoc. Everybody, what the heck, this is he tapped and this and that. So for me, the reason I say it was one of my favorites, you got to understand that when you fast forward to today and you see the Gordon Ryans, the Craig Jones, the Nick Ryans, all these big names, the Rotolos, that that moment in history right there was a precursor to some of the things that are in place right now. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The euphoria, and you have to understand it was a golden time in jiu-jitsu. Not as many people did. So every tournament had the same value and prestige of an ADCC. Imagine that. You
Mm,
don't have tournaments all the time. So whenever you have one, it's
it's a
of a
big
big
deal.
value, right? And then the people that go, all the top guys, they would go. They were not spread out going to different places, getting paid different money. You would go there. So it was a magic moment. And the family was way more united. So you had also that aura of all the family, sharing that moment. I miss those. So when I say it was not just the level of the competitors, which they are great at that point in time, both my brother and his opponent, but it was just the atmosphere and the memories that he built. You know what I'm saying? So
That's a great story.
yeah,
You competed at ADCC.
I did.
What was your experience like? Tell us about the early days of ADCC.
Yeah, well, so Jean-Jacques competed a year before me. Um, he won the tournament. I think it was 99. So in 2000, I went there to compete. I made the mistake to do training camp in California, going to Jean-Jacques Academy, and he was my main training partner. And I think it was the first or second day. I was on my knees on his guard, you know, when you sit up and roll the guy over with a hip thrust, he kind of rolled me into like a sweep, and my foot was pointed out. I rolled my
Oh,
ankle.
you rolled your like
Yeah,
an
and
inside heel hook, sorta.
I didn't know if I broke my ankle or not. I refused to go to the hospital because if they said I had to put a cast, I couldn't go. So I had to tape it up really good. And I couldn't train as much after that, but I went there and it was nice to participate. Of course, I was physically well prepared and technically, but mentally, I was thinking about my injury. And I'm not using that as an excuse. So I won against this Russian wrestler with a triangle the first match, and then I had an overtime with Marshall Feitosa in the second match, and then there was a technicality. I'm not sure if I pull guard, and then when you pull guard after the overtime, it's like a -1 or something like that, you know. But I I feel like it was good to be there, see my brothers perform. You know, Higan did well, Jean Jacques did well, a lot of great names that we both know were there competing. I think Jeff Monson won the division. I saw Mark Kerr competing. My brother Higan had a good match with him. Trying to remember what happened. And yeah, I think the decision was Higan was third on that one, but the decision he lost the decision to Mark Kerr. Anyhow, uh, going back to ADCC, it was in the very beginning. You know, I saw a guy getting kicked out because a Russian guy, started getting into a fight with Ricardo Arona. He was expelled. They took his passport. You know, you don't mess up in Abu Dhabi. You know what I'm saying?
No way.
And so we went to Dubai after the fact. The sponsors paid us for staying in a 6-star hotel. I never knew there would be a 6-star
I
hotel.
didn't even know that. I didn't even know there was 6 stars to give.
Mandalay Bay was the most I've enjoyed. You know, a 5-star. I've been in a penthouse in the Mandalay, but going to that place was like, man, this is like another world right here, right? But anyhow, it was interesting because I saw at that time an amazing supporter of jiu-jitsu, the Prince, uh, putting everything that was necessary for that competition to happen in the middle of the desert, bring everybody in, incur all the cost, and really push forward such an amazing event that it was never intended to make money. It was
Mhm.
intended to promote the sport. And of course, I guess it has evolved to what it is today. And then, of course, you have Craig Jones coming into the scene and creating a whole new landscape that has been already taking place for a while. But I think that it's literally a journey, Brandon, when you watch what it was back in Brazil, what happened when we first went to Abu Dhabi, and then what we see happening today.
If you had to look back, so this is my last question because I know you gotta go and I gotta go pick up my
Yeah,
little girl.
you got
So this is my last question. If you had to look back and separate jujitsu into a couple of chapters, like you're writing a book and it's gonna have 4 sections in it, maybe
mhm.
3 sections. What are those sections? What are those eras of jujitsu?
I would divide in two.
Okay.
Brazil, America. When jiu-jitsu was in Brazil, the Japanese um, passed the ball, passed the torch to the Brazilians. They took to another level. There we need the Brazilians are still heavily involved with it, and they have great. But when it came to America, it catapulted into the whole world. Jiu-jitsu would never, if we chose any other country other than America, jiu-jitsu will not be where it is. Americans like to win. Americans are competitor, and they like to become dominant in whatever sport they focus upon.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? That's no accident that we have the greatest athletes, in my opinion, over here. You know, so I think jiu-jitsu couldn't have a better place to be taken to another level. So the before and the after, Japan to Brazil, that was the before, Brazil to America, that's what it is.
That's it. All right.
Yeah, man.
Carlos, give us where can we follow you? Where can everybody? We're on your YouTube and Facebook channel streaming right now, as well as mine.
Yeah.
But where can they follow you on Instagram? Tell them about your schools, your association, your programs. Lay it on us.
I'm gonna go in a three bullet point here. Okay, at Carlos Machado Jiu Jitsu is my Instagram. You want to get good at butterfly guard on the 19th and 20th of this month. I'm going to be teaching an immersion class, 6 hours long, here in Dallas, Texas, at my academy. The information is going to be on Instagram. If you are somebody who is a loner or an orphan in martial arts, you don't have a mentor, you don't have a dad, you don't have somebody or a group or a family that can help you out, the Carlos Machado Jiu Jitsu Association will be there for you. We don't ask anybody who's already with somebody to come our way, but if you need our help, we'll be there for you on your corner. And you can find more on that on machadomethod.com
All right, and Instagram.
and Instagram. You'll find it at Carlos Machado Jiu Jitsu, like I mentioned. And hopefully, you and I are going to catch up some more on some camps and on some business, PGF, and
Yeah,
it's a bright future, man.
yeah. We got F news. We'll sneak out to everybody about Carlos
Uh-oh.
Machado, but not yet. Not yet.
No,
I can't drop
all
it
right.
just yet.
Please don't. Let's keep the secret.
All right. Carlos,
All right,
thanks, man. I really love getting to spend a little time just absorbing as much wisdom from you as I can. And I'm really thankful for you. And I hope that we get to do this a lot more.
you got it, bud. Thank you so much for your time and support.